Welcome back to the channel and another broadcast. Paul, Peterhead, Scotland, recovered addict, glad to be here, glad to be clean by the grace of God. The company I keep, literature I read, morning devotions, nightly inventory. Yeah, I'm really pleased today to have been joined by Chayenne.
Hi everyone, my name is Chayenne and I'm from the Netherlands and I'm very glad to be here today.
Wonderful. We're right glad that you've come along this afternoon to carry a message. Welcome to the channel, family. There's lots of resources on here. There's over 100 broadcasts now. I think there's approaching 30 personal stories. Bear in mind you can pause, rewind, fast forward and share, like and subscribe and comment underneath wherever you see this posted. If you're looking for sponsorship, we've got current lists of men and women that are ready, willing and able to take you through the 12-step process so you can be set free from the delusion of drinking and drugging and find a new lifestyle. So if you're looking for sponsorship or you're looking for resources, then just put your first name, your number underneath wherever you see this, and we will definitely get back to you. There are podcasts on this channel on each of the steps. Indeed, there's two on step 1 and 2 on step 2 and 2 on step 4. There's also podcasts on an entire psychic change, the spiritual awakening, and the ABCs of addiction, as well as the traditions. So do check those out. So I'm really pleased today that you've come along to share your story with us, Chayenne, of hope, faith and courage. And without further ado, it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you again for inviting me onto the podcast. I'm really excited. And to start, also a bit nervous. This is my first time being on a podcast, so let's just, I'll take a short moment to ask God to be with me. So, my name is Chayenne and I'm an addict. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happened, the problem, and then I'm going to tell you about my roads in recovery. So, well, where to start? When I was maybe start when I was a little girl. My parents were there, and I had a fine childhood until the age of 8 or 9, and my parents decided to separate. It all went a little bit already downhill for me. So my mom and dad were present, but they were not emotionally available. So what happened is in our household is there were laughters or there were tears, but there was nothing in between. We never spoke of our feelings. We never spoke of how we deal with problems. And this is all things I had to learn in and I'm still learning in recovery. But what I do want to say is that I've learned already that they did the best they could, and they did everything out of love for their child. That's what I already know. So whatever they did was out of the best interest of me. It's what they thought was the best to do. What happened when my mom and dad separated is I started to find attention elsewhere. I was always looking for outside validation. I needed to be good. I needed to be better. I needed to get the best grades. And again, my parents pushed me to try the best I could, already led until an early burnout when I was 21. But again, that as they did the best they could. So what happened? I think around 15, 16 when I started going out on the weekends, started seeking attention from boys, because that's what I thought was the best validation for me. I was looking for their approval. I thought that if I would sleep with them, they would like me and they would love me, because that's all I ever wanted, to be loved, and I was looking for that love outside of myself. I never ever thought that everything that I ever wished for, and everything I ever wanted was inside of me. That's what I had to learn later on in life. And, that's been quite a journey. So I started drinking, and um, actually, I knew from the moment I picked up my first drink uh, that I was so, hooked to it. I was hooked to the feeling of I didn't had any fear. I didn't had any low self-esteem, because everything fell, everything, um, how do I say that? Everything just went to the background when I took a drink. I felt, um, I felt, uh, that I could take on the world. I felt like a woman. I felt like, nobody can touch me and I can do anything I want to. Um, so I started drinking every weekend when I was still going to school. I used to have these huge hangovers. And when I was 21, I started doing drugs as well. In the meantime, my mom had a different boyfriend, and in my personal and family life, everything started to fall apart, you know. So when I was 21 and I had the chance to go for a internship outside of in another country, I took the chance, and I was gone because I couldn't live at home anymore. And I thought, this is it. I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna show everyone that I can live in another country and do it. Little did I know that, and what it already says in the book, if you change, you can change your love, you could change your house, you can change the home you're living in, but the problem will be the same. So I started doing drugs first time when I was out of the country, and I took it home, and I was hooked forever. Well, not forever. I was hooked, and when I started, it was just once every other weekend, once a weekend, twice a weekend, and go on and go on and go on, until a point that I just couldn't do it anymore. You know, um, I was um, I was getting a shell of the person I was, and I was hanging out with the wrong crowd. I was doing things totally above every limit I've ever set for myself. I crossed boundaries that I never should have crossed. But being on drugs and being on alcohol they disappeared. I did everything I could to get my hands on my stuff. I somehow always maintained a full-time job. uh, don't ask me how I did that, but somehow I did it. um, and it just started eating at me. When I was 30, my body basically just said, no more. I fell into a huge depression, and all I could do was blame other people, blame my work, blame my manager. It has nothing to do with me. I'm just, they overworked me. they did this, they did that. And I was still looking, what I said earlier, I was still um, looking for all the outside conditions instead of looking inside of me. So that depression, um, like, it gave me a wake-up call. Um, I was suicidal, and just in time, I rang the bell and I went to the doctor, and I had some intensive therapy. But then again, I lied about doing drugs. I lied about my drinking because I knew, deep down, I knew it was the problem, but I couldn't face it yet. I couldn't admit it to myself that that was the problem. So I struggled on for another good 5 years. And, I just started thinking about, I have all these dreams for myself, and I have things I want to do in my life. And I don't want to end up as the local woman who goes to the pub every day, because I just had this little fire inside of me that just wanted to make something of my life, you know. And when I almost reached my deepest low, I started to pray, basically, because I didn't know what else to do anymore. I never prayed my entire life. I never did it. But I just started to pray, and I just said, please help me. I didn't spoke to God yet, but I just threw it out in the universe, and I said, just please help me. I have this life full of alcohol and drugs, and I just don't want to do it anymore. I just want to stop. I want to have a life free of alcohol and drugs. Please help me. And so I will never forget this date on July 19th, 2021, is it? July 19th, 2021. Yeah, I hit my low. I I was riding on my bike, being shit-faced. Um, and I just made a huge fall, like huge. And the moment I fell, I just knew deep down inside, this is it. This is it. I was in so much panic and tears, and I just knew this is it. I woke up the next day, and I think for the first time in my entire life, after so many falls and things I did, and I thank God I opened my eyes and I was able to move my legs and I was able to move my body, because if I just fell, an inch wrong, it could have been done. And that was the day I decided to put down everything. I called the doctor. I got a referral to a clinic, and I went to a clinic for 7 weeks. And that, to this day, is the best gift I gave myself. Um, it's it's the clinic gave me time to reset myself, to come down of everything, and just give me, my first glimpse of the program. Um, and that's where my journey started. Yeah, I've met some amazing people in the clinic with all different backgrounds, and we came, everywhere. We came from everywhere, and it made me realize that addiction, it doesn't have a face. It doesn't have a color. It's anybody who can get addicted, you know. And the moms, the dads, the young people, I actually was in a visit in the clinic with some people of my own hometown. And, at first glimpse, we looked at each other and we were like, oh shit, you're here too, you know? And then it was like, oh, but you're here. So you're trying to make something, you're trying to better your life. So let's do it together. Um, my first hardship in recovery is I felt pregnant in the clinic. It's not something I highly recommend. Um, and I lost the baby with 10 weeks. Um, in a couple of weeks, it will be 3 years. It still gets to me. Um, I don't recommend this at all. I don't recommend getting a relationship. I don't recommend getting pregnant in the first year or in the first 2 years of a year recovery because, it was quite the ride. It was quite the ride, and luckily, I am so grateful that my mom was able to be there for me. She took me in and she took care of me when I couldn't take care of myself in the first few weeks, in the first few months of my recovery. Um, what did I do to go through that was I went to a meeting almost every day, and I I talked about it, because I didn't know how to deal with this. Because I was just in recovery. I didn't even know how to deal with myself sometimes. But I knew that if I pick up now, I will fall back and I don't know if I will come back. So that was the only thing I held on to. I don't want to relapse. I don't want to pick up my first. So I started going to meetings almost every night. I called people in the fellowship. Um, I just did what was suggested, basically. And that's what I've been trying. I say trying, that's what I've been trying to do for the past 3 years now. My my recovery is for me, it's a bumpy road. It's not all fun and games. I heard somebody said in a meeting the other day, life still gives me troubles, and the program promises me that my life will get better, but it doesn't promise me rainbows, and it doesn't promise me unicorns. It promised me a life, and hardships come with life. Difficulties come in life. So I've never learned how to deal with difficulties, and now I can deal with them, just by doing this step, just by reaching out to my sponsor, just by going to meetings, just go and hang out with fellows, call them, go to events. That's what really helped me in the beginning, going to the events that are organized in all fellowships. You know, I was scared of connection. I was scared of connection with myself, with other people, because I didn't know how to behave. I did not know how to behave myself because I was mostly intoxicated. So I did not know how to behave myself. I didn't thought I was a fun person. I didn't thought that people would want to hang out with me, because I was always the fun one when I was drunk, you know. But I'm actually, I came to learn that I'm also fun when I'm sober. And life is fun sober, you know. So the events really helped me to get in connection with other people and hear their stories. because I'm not alone. I am not alone. I thought my story was bad because I have this huge ego, huge. I'm still working on it. It's a daily progress. I am telling you, my ego is so huge. I can tell my things. I can tell myself everything, and I will believe it. Everything, and I will believe it. So I'm so in recovery now, going through the events and learning how to connect with other people, learned that's how I learned to connect with myself as well. Because I was looking at other people like, how are they doing it? What can I learn from it? And then I have to be careful that I don't go into comparing myself, but just look at them. Okay, what does he have that I can also have? What can I use? What do I see? And what how can I use that for me? Um, I had I already had two sponsors, um, and I didn't, it just didn't work out for me. And the sponsor I have today, wow, she is patient and she is caring, and she really she took me by the hand and showed me the program, showed me how it works for her. Everything I say to her, she comes back with her own examples. She comes back with her own experiences. She never tells me how I should work it. She never tells me how I should do it. No, she just tells me how it works for her and how she does it and how and then I can learn from that. Um, and my hardest lesson, I think now is, or what I came to learn is, I've never learned how to live in honesty. So in our household, there were always secrets, or my mom would say, I will tell you when you're 18, when you're an adult. Um, so I did not know how to be honest with myself, or how to be honest, well, actually, that's the only point, how to be honest with myself, and how to acknowledge feelings, and how to acknowledge how how my state of mind is. Because I've learned myself things, because in addiction you just have to find ways to cope with yourself. So I've put all these systems in place in my head, and I have to unlearn them now. And that's okay, because I don't want to be, sometimes I just don't want to be that person anymore, because I don't condone with it anymore. I've seen how the program can be. I've seen how I can be if I'm truly honest with myself, and I can unlearn things. So honesty is for me it's a huge one, and the willingness to be honest. Oh, and I need help with that. I need the help of God with that, because I just came to learn that I can't do it on my own. If I lived life on my own terms for so long, I just had to, I just I couldn't do it anymore. And now I am, because I where I am at the moment is, I'm in the fully surrender mode. I was working with my sponsor. We came to step 4, and I was just stalling it. I thought to myself, I can't do this. This is what I'm most afraid of. I just cannot look at myself because all those character defects, and I'm not a nice person. I'm not a good person. And she just said, you know what? We're going back to step 3, because you have to surrender again. Because if you surrender, you'll feel how God will see you. you just have to pray for it, and you have to truly believe that he will show you the way, you know. So I'm at the moment, I'm in a phase of surrender, and um, I've never I've never experienced something like this before in my entire life. You know, for the first time in 3 years, I'm doing a 1990. It's the best decision I've ever made. Well, part of from the clinic, but you know, doing a 1990, being in a program for 3 years, it just completely changed my look on the program, how I work the program, how I integrated it in my life. You know, the program is really becoming a part of me, a part of my life, a part of, well, everything. It works its ways, you know, its ways through everything at the moment. And I sometimes I look back at, you know, at the last couple of weeks, and I just, you know, I just can't believe actually everything that happened. You know, they say that God works in mysterious ways. And as a child, I always believed there was something greater than me. I believed there was a God, you know, God as how I see it. Um, and I, you know, and today I thought to myself, you know, I am a child of God, and God loves me. You know, being addicted, um, just, you know, the addiction made just such a huge hole inside of me, and that hole can be filled now with God's love, you know, and that's all because of the program. So actually, I am just right about, you know, I think in a couple of weeks I will start on my step 4 again. Due to work schedules, it's sometimes difficult to meet with my sponsor, but we make it happen, and I'm gonna do step 4 again. And I feel so confident now. You know, I feel that God is with me, so I can do a step 4. I don't have to be afraid of all my character defects, because I know, um, they were there for a reason. Sometimes they helped me, you know, back in the day. My character defects helped me. They took me out of situations where maybe if I was sober, I couldn't be in them, you know. So you know, they helped me, and now I can thank them and say goodbye to them. You know, I have to thank them because they got me out of some pretty nasty situations. And I can say, you know, I can look at them, I can say, thank you, you helped me. And now, please, you know, of course it's daily work, but I can say goodbye to them because I am a better person today with God, you know. It's not just me, it's the both of us. And as you can hear, my ego still needs some working on. Um, so yeah, that's where I am at the moment. And yeah, um, what else can I say about my recovery? Um, you know, the person I am today is the person I always wanted to be. This was the person I was dreaming of to be. I was hoping of to be, you know. Um, if you know, if you do a question now around my friends, um, you know, they will probably say, or I hope, maybe they will say that I'm a loyal friend now. You know, they can rely on me. Um, I am present, you know. I am there for other people. where I was first just, um, I was starting discussions to have an excuse to use, and now I can just have a heart to heart with people. Of course, sometimes I don't have good days as well. Not all days are 100%. But still, if I have a day at 60% and that's the best I can do, that's still 100% for me. Um, what I also learned is um, I'm precisely at the moment where I should be. So everything, everyone's path in recovery is different. You don't have to compare, I don't have to compare myself to other people's recovery, because I am precisely at the moment where I should be. And that's what I believe in, you know. What else has recovery taught me? Oh, there's actually a good one. Well, it's more of a present of God, actually. So I've always dreamed of becoming a flight attendant. It was my lifelong dream, and I never gave up on it. I always applied when the job was open, and they always turned me down. And I never understood why. I never understood it. I thought, because I'm what they need. I am good at what I do. I know hospitality. I can be a good flight attendant, and they keep turning me down. And then when I was a year in recovery, I was a year in recovery. Yeah, I was a year and a month clean, and they hired me. And that was for me, that was, the icing on the cake. I couldn't believe it. I cried my eyes out. So there's a present of God. He gave me that present. And then he said, and now you have to be patient because I'm putting you on the waiting list. So I had a year and a half on a waiting list before they had a spot for me. Um, and I am thankful now for the year and a half, because the past year and a half, I grew so much. I learned so much more about myself, about life, about the program, how I can integrate it into my work. And nowadays I am grateful and humble that I can follow meetings all around the world. I fly everywhere. And this is, every time I every time I have a work day, I get up and I thank God that I'm able to do my dream job. I am so, so grateful for that. And my day starts with praying and meditating and reading. Not every day, but I try it every day. I do my best. And I think the best is, if you know that you're doing your best, I think that's enough. Because I know of myself when I don't do my best. I can feel it. If I am skipping meditation, if I'm skipping praying, if I skip reading, I know it. And I feel, I have this feeling inside of me that tells me like, oh, you're getting back in old habits, you know? So I have to be mindful of that. And every day is just to learn, is just another day of learning, how to deal with myself, how to deal with life, how to deal with God in my life. um so yeah, I think I can say that I am a very grateful recovering addict. I'm not there yet, but we ever there? No. Life will keep throwing things at me, but it will throw things at me that I know I can handle. God will never give me something he knows I cannot handle. So I'm very grateful. And I think it's time to wrap up. I want to thank you so much for listening, and I want you all have a very blessed day.
Oh, that was beautiful, Cheyenne. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful share. I was listening to every word and I enjoyed it. It was very deep, and you got me thinking about the principles. But before I get into that, I just want to say welcome to anyone that's new to this Cocaine Anonymous YouTube channel. There are over 100 broadcasts, so please feel free to check out the other broadcasts and to share. Bear in mind, you can pause, rewind, and fast forward and share this broadcast wherever you wish. If you're listening to this, you're looking for sponsorship, we've got men and women that are ready, willing, and able to take you through this wonderful process so you can recover from what seems to be a hopeless state of mind and body, and you can recover from the delusion of drinking and drugging and find a new lifestyle. So yeah, get involved. Feel free to begin. We can also send you resources and your number and add you to very healthy WhatsApp groups where you can get daily food, medicine, daily recovery, a treatment for addiction, treatment for alcoholism. Cheyenne, that was beautiful. That was very deep, and I loved it. I absolutely loved your share. I really did, and I really appreciate you coming along to carry this message of hope and freedom and courage with us this afternoon. And I love particularly how you talked about surrender and the process of surrender, and the recognition that we've not arrived. And it's something of a mystical proposition, isn't it? We believe that God's ways are perfect, that the Creator, the Source, is perfect, but we don't claim perfection. We claim progress, don't we? And it was beautiful. In fact, I loved every word of your share, and things like acceptance and courage and willingness. And you also shared about how the program has become a part of your daily life, and how, we start to live this process. And just before I let you back in, if I may, I just want to share a little bit about, you touched on morning devotions there, and, I see them as a vital component of sobriety. And my experience has been personally and working with others, that when persons omit morning devotions, and if they're, even near a chronic or serious addict, alcoholic, then it's usually just a matter of time, before they pick up again. So it really does make a difference. For me, morning devotions, sober network, service, if we omit any of those, then, as I say, particularly for a chronic addict, it's usually a matter of time. And conversely, if we support others in this process, and if we do service, and if we do morning devotions, then you can have a manageable and contented lifestyle, and that's the gift of this process. And I loved what you shared about surrender, the process of surrender. I mean, the truth of the matter is, to go from drinking and drugging every day for a long period of time to trusting in God or a higher power, that's a process. That's a journey, and it's a daily journey. And sometimes it feels like we need to be restored to sanity, sometimes many times a day, and make a fresh commitment to this solution, this holistic solution. So, come back in, Cheyenne. We've got a good 10 minutes yet to have a back and forth. So I'll hand it over to you for a minute or two to come in if you wish.
Oh, thank you so much, Vaughn. Thank you so much for your words. Yeah, what you said, it's a process, a daily process. And I don't strive for perfection anymore. That's what I did. I always try to be the perfect person. I have to do my work perfectly. I have to do the steps perfectly. I have to, everything had to be perfect. And I couldn't keep up with that anymore as well. It just, I was getting tired of it. And luckily, the program also taught me that, it's about progression, it's not about your perfection and how could you do the steps, just how are you willing to spiritually grow into the program, and how can you um, integrate that into your life. That's what it's telling me. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, the idea of progress, not perfection, and growth and change, you know, just give me a moment here, just, you know, my experience has been is that, you know, we also, I believe, have to recover from dysfunction in order to stay clean and sober. You know, I've seen many persons go through the steps, familiarize themselves with the literature, but still have, you know, a substantive quantity of dysfunction in their day-to-day life. And for some reason, that lack of discipline has, whether it's been causative or contributory to what measure, I don't know, but I've seen it where there hasn't been that ongoing change and growth, and they've gradually gone back to a drink of drugs. So I think, you know, there's various aspects of ongoing recovery in terms of maintaining, you know, what will ultimately, you know, be shown to be permanent sobriety. And I believe in that today because I've buried people who had it. I'm sure they had hours and days where they didn't think they had it, but as it turned out, in the long run, that's what they had. You know, my friend Frank, he passed on with 42 years of continuous sobriety, during which time he had 2 heart operations, 2 divorces, 2 of his wives died, and his house got repossessed. He stayed sober through all that, and it proved that's what he had. You know, and there was some features about Frank. If he said he'd be there, he'd be there. He was reliable, and he was there to support and encourage people continually. Or it seemed, well, certainly at the meetings anyway, he was always there to help people. And I knew he worked with others behind the scenes. And, you know, I'm friends with persons that he helped locally here to this day. And so, yeah, I believe in permanent sobriety, but it's only achieved on a daily basis. And it's really as we maintain a fit spiritual condition, you know, and as we maintain that spiritual condition, which is really a matter of a transparent accountable relationship with God, then largely I've got sanity, which will largely means that my physical behaviour will be right. You know, so it's spiritual, mental, physical, but it's only God that can do that, that can keep us in that fit spiritual condition. You know, it's a divine work of grace, and you know, power is mentioned 3 times in the steps. We don't have much power when we're drinking and drugging because we're living in that hideous cycle of living to use, using to live, ways and means to get more. Much of our life and thinking centered in drugs, including alcohol. So we're powerless whilst we're living to use, using to live. But in step 2, particularly for new persons, they come to faith and trust that there's some power somewhere can help them. The power isn't named. It's not defined in the 2nd step. It's not even personified. It's just that there is a power that can restore you to right thinking and thus right living. And you know, it's a paradox against the 1st step. You know, we learn and acknowledge, you know, because of the physical phenomenon of craving, which goes after a week or so of abstinence, and the more nutrition, hydration, fresh air, and exercise I get, the faster that physical craving goes. And after a week or so, it's then an issue of mental control. But of course, the bigger picture is, you know, a higher power and a lower power, God and the devil, or sobriety and using, you know, or drunkenness. And, you know, connection with the higher power sets us free from the lower power. And in the 2nd step, we come to believe that we can be restored to right thinking, you know, clarity of thought and purpose. And then we make the necessary commitment and the sensible commitment in the 3rd step, problem, solution, commitment. You know, honesty, open-mindedness, willingness. And it's a daily process applying these steps, you know, and if there's anyone new listening, it can seem a lot to take in, but basically it's a program of complete abstinence and then the responsibility to maintain a right relation with God, who will help you stay clean and sober and manageable, you know, and can help you with all your problems today. So yeah, I'll pass it back to you, Chayenne.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I got me thinking what you said about discipline, because I always told myself, you don't have discipline, you don't have what it takes. You know, you don't have what it takes to do something repetitive every day that is good for you, you know? Um, and and that's also, you know, it gave me some insight alongside with therapy, of course, how which thought should I believe, and which one is my own and which one doesn't, you know? What is mine and what is from outside? And how do I believe my own thoughts? You know, it was for me a real process of getting rid of old beliefs and letting new beliefs come in, you know. Um, Maybe I was lucky that at home we were already taught that there is more, you know, than between heaven and between the sky and heavens. You know, there's something more spiritual, and but then again, you know, I maybe I knew it was there, but I never fully surrendered myself to God as how, you know, as God as I see it. Um, and the moment I started in 1990, the discipline for it, as you if you want to call it discipline, just it was there, you know, and like really like a finger snip. Um, I I do, you know, 90 meetings. I finally started writing a daily step 10 to my sponsor. I never did that in the past year because I always had another excuse, you know? I'm tired, I'm this, I'm that, I'll do it tomorrow. It was just basically me uh like the addicted person, you know. It was the addictive thoughts I have, because that's what I did. I said to myself when I was in addiction, oh, I will do it tomorrow, and then the day of tomorrow, you know, I will do it tomorrow, and I'll do it again and again, and a week later, and then I had to do something, and then we were 2 weeks further. So I never, you know, that's why I thought I never had discipline. That's why I thought I never had discipline, because I always, and the thing is, I always made a deal with myself, you know, and then I wouldn't live up to that deal. I always broke it with myself. Everything I said to myself, I wouldn't do because, you know, I never did that. So why start now? And the moment I completely surrendered and said, okay, I give up, I try to do the program on my terms. And now I'm handing it over to you, to God. And out of nowhere, I just started writing daily step 10s to my sponsor. And I can go to meetings, and I can do a morning meditation, and I can do a prayer, and I can do, you know, whatever is necessary for my recovery. It's I think it's admirable that step 3 is, you know, if you truly feel step 3, you know, just I don't know, I'm just so, I think I can speak on and on and on about step 3 because it's just, you know, it gave me so much in the past few weeks, like I told earlier. And I'm now even looking at, you know, going to a church nearby. I never thought about doing that, but I just feel the presence of God so clearly now that I'm like, okay, there's got to be, you know, there's got to be more to it. The spiritual side, maybe the religious side, but that's, you know, my own path that I'm following. But why not explore it? You know, I have the chance now. I mean, why not just explore new things? That's what I, you know, because why not, you know, get myself out of my comfort zone and explore new things? I always lived in fear. I've lived in fear for so many years, fear of doing things wrong, fear of doing something new, fear of doing this, fear of doing that. And now I can, you know, I feel like God is leading me the way to it. So why not explore it? And if it's not for me, it's not for me. But that's also something that the program is, you know, teaching me. And showing me that I can just start new things. And fear is, it's not there for me anymore. I don't have to listen to my fear voice because there's something greater than me telling me, like, let's go this direction. It's great. It's just great, Paul.
Lovely. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, we become the change we want to see, and then we have to just maintain the consistency. I love what you shared about, if you're not doing your best, and the solution to low self-esteem is to do esteemable things consistently. And yeah, I was just contemplating that as you was beautifully sharing, I might add, and I was thinking, whilst I or anyone else is listening to a beautiful share such as yours, they're not thinking of buying drugs for a start off. They're not obsessing about resentment or fear or confusion. They are in the solution and having a vital spiritual experience, which the psychiatrists and this program brings together the best of the human knowledge and fields of research and practice. The psychiatrist tells us we need an ongoing vital spiritual experience. The doctors tell us we need entire abstinence. Faith groups tell us we need a transparent, accountable relationship with God. And the program tells us we need that accountable relationship with each other, and then we've got steps, we've got literature, we've got structure, we've got readings, we've got meetings. So it really is a design for living that works in your going. In 32 minutes, I've got a phone call with a man on a different continent, and it's a man that I had the privilege of going through the steps with 8 months ago, something, 8 months ago, and he's on day 2 or 3. And around perhaps just less than half of the persons I work with do pick up at some point, usually between 6 and 10 weeks kind of thing. And out of those, probably about half of them use for a day or two, but out of the rest of them, some of them carry on using for a while. But either way around, they have a powerful, vital spiritual experience going through the steps, and they experience some liberty and some peace and some understanding and some kind of a beginning of a relationship with God. And I was pondering, we're going. I'm planning on trying to do a much more intensive step 1 with it. And in Narcotics Anonymous, they spend up to 2 months working step 1. I usually spend 3, perhaps just a bit more than 3 hours, usually working with someone over 4 or 5 phone calls. Also, they'll do a podcast in step 1, and they'll read step 1 out of 12 and 12, as well as the big book. They do the podcast talk on their own time, So this afternoon, and I usually keep telephone calls when I'm working with someone to 30 minutes. I find that's enough for me to be holding a plastic device and talking into it, And because of memory retention and patience and tolerance, I find half an hour, 40 minutes to be more than enough for a phone call. So I'm going to. The aim is to spend about half the time in step 1, which we've been doing for the last couple of days. And also I'm going to try and help him with his understanding of God. And I was listening to you beautifully share there, and for me, the higher power is the Lord Jesus Christ, the King of Kings. There's no question or theories around that. It's all fact. I'm crystal clear on that. I have no questions at all. In these rooms, it's not essential to believe in God to get sober. In my experience, particularly with chronic or near chronic addict alcoholics, without some kind of relationship with a person, with the Creator, in non-generic terms, they have to have a relationship with God, or else they usually don't get much past short-term sobriety. That's been my experience and opinion. Now, this man has a problem, as many do, with the notion of God, because the earth is spiritually a very dark place. And you mentioned spirituality and religion. Well, I happen to know that there's no difference other than human perception. There is a creator, period. And this man, I'm going to try to help him, Cheyenne. I'm going to try to help him by showing him in the steps that it's crystal clear, that it's a person that you're talking to, that you're asking for your defects and shortcomings to be removed. It's a person that you're turning your thoughts and life over to. And you better hope that it's God, otherwise the program's just nonsense. The program does not make sense, nor does the book, without an all-knowing, all-seeing creator. It just doesn't make sense. We welcome everything, but facts are facts, and so I'm going to try and help him, particularly by pointing out 3, 7, 11, which crystal clear personify a creator, an intelligent designer, if you like, albeit without being given a personal name, but the reality is there. So I'm going to spend some time trying to help him see, as I have in the past, but clearly to no avail because he's still very vague about all this. And this is probably the prime reason why he's struggling to stay clean. Anyway, I'm waffling now, but the point is, the solution is to be in the solution. And whilst listening to wonderful shares like yours and in the literature, reading literature, and praying together, the miracle happens, and the obsessions, drink and drug is completely removed and persons change and grow and flourish, So, what I'd like to do is, before I invite you back in for any final thoughts, I'd just like to show everyone on the call a meetings list. If you're new to CA, we'd warmly suggest that you get along to some meetings. You can pause or screenshot what's on the screen just now. All these meetings are on the screen at the moment, on every single day. We're often to be found at a group called We Can Recover that's on at 2 o'clock, 8:30, 9:30 every day, all year round. That's UK times, which is 9 a.m., 3 p.m., 4:30 Eastern Standard Time in America. And these are all public meetings. You won't be required to put your camera on or even talk. You can come along and listen to the message. Conversely, if you want to share, you'd be very welcome to do so. So, I'd just like to hand it back to you for a minute or two if you've any closing thoughts you want to share with our listeners today, Cheyenne.
Well, first of all, Paul, I just want to say thank you again. I am very grateful and humbled that you asked me to share part of my story. I just, I was so nervous in the beginning, but once I just started talking, I asked God to be with me and he took over. He just took over. I never once was inside of my head. And that just shows me how powerful, his presence is for me. For all the people who are new here, just please give the program, just give it a go, just do it for a year or so. I know how many countless hours I've spent on just doing nothing, being addicted, using at home with the curtains closed, not wanting to see anybody, just give it a year. And if you don't like it, you can always go back. But I think it's fair to say that as the moment you get into the program, you don't ever want to go back, or at least that's how I see it. And just reach out to people, reach out, make that connection. I know how scary it is, but just do it. You've done things, I've done things so different and out of my comfort zone, and it's giving me so much. I've made new friends. Sometimes I even can call them family. The power of a home group can be so strong, even if it's online. I've been jumping into online meetings, and they have such a powerful home group connection that I'm like, wow, this could be an in-person meeting. It's nothing different from it. So if you're ever considering of getting into the program, just do it. It will save your life. It saved mine, and it's brought me my dream job, and everything else. I was mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, I was just, I was rock bottom. Exactly, the promises, Paul. Thank you for showing it. The promises, they do come true. They do come true, every one of them, you know. Just give it a chance. Give yourself a chance. I think that's the one. Give yourself a chance. Yeah. Thank you again, Paul.
Shalom, that was beautiful. Thank you, Cheyenne. That was truly great. Okay, family, stay strong in the solution, in prayer, and stay honest. The program, the meetings, the fellowship, the literature will help you stay honest. Step one is about maintaining, accepting, and maintaining the reality. You can't drink or drug, use or lose successfully, which means you're done. God's power, higher power, literature, the meetings, the fellowship, and through a round of 12 steps, good sponsorship will help you stay honest. And the idea of the steps is that you can stand on your own 2 feet as a recovered man or recovered woman, free from the hideous self-centered delusion of drinking and drugging, and find a new lifestyle. Right, super duper appreciate you, Cheyenne. So without further ado, I want to thank you again for being here. Okay, stay strong, family.